I stood outside the imposing gates of my son's-in-law's mansion, my hand hovering hesitantly over the polished brass knocker. Through the heavy mahogany door, I could hear my daughter-in-law, Emily's voice, drifting clearly into the crisp evening air. "Don't worry, Mom. James's father is. Well, he's simple. Just be patient with him. He means well, but you know, different backgrounds and all that." My name is Robert Collier. I'm 56 years old, and on paper I look like a man who makes $40,000. Not a year, a month. But my son James has absolutely no idea. And tonight I was about to find out exactly what kind of family he had married into. Before I continue with this story, don't forget to like this video and leave a comment below about where you're watching from. Your support helps this channel grow. Thank you. Now, you might wonder why a man making nearly $500,000 a month would pretend to be struggling. It started 7 years ago when James was still a sophomore in college. I built my software infrastructure firm from a basement startup into a global powerhouse, landing Fortune 500 clients and massive government defense contracts. But I learned early on that money changes how people perceive you. My ex-wife's family taught me that painful lesson the hard way. The moment they caught the scent of success, they circled like vultures, hands out. Sob stories rehearsed. Distant relationships suddenly became vital. To protect my son, I drove the same dented 2008 Honda Accord I'd owned since before the millions. I lived in the same modest two-bedroom bungalow in the suburbs and wore clothes from discount racks. When James visited, I'd hide the tailored Italian suits in storage and park the Porsche at my office downtown. He saw a father who worked tirelessly, lived frugally, and taught him the value of every single dime. He never knew about the diversified investment portfolio, the luxury vacation villas I rented out, or the fact that I'd already set aside a $2 million trust for his future. Money he'd only receive when he proved he could build a life with his own two hands. 3 weeks ago, James called with a nervous tremor in his voice. Emily's parents, the Sterling Vances, had finally agreed to meet me. They lived in an exclusive enclave of Westchester, old money, apparently. According to James, they were deeply concerned about Emily marrying beneath her social station. He actually used those specific words, not realizing how each syllable stung. My boy had been with Emily for 3 years, married for 1, and I'd been strategically unavailable for every suggested gathering until now. "Dad, just try to make a good impression, okay?" James had pleaded on the phone. "Maybe don't mention the Honda, and if they ask about your work, just say, consulting. They don't need the boring details about your small contracts." Small contracts. If only he knew that last month's small contract was overhauling the cybersecurity grid for a federal intelligence agency. But I just said what I always said. "Don't worry about me, son. I'll be myself." And that's exactly what I plan to do. Or rather, I'd be the version of myself everyone expected to see. The morning of the dinner, I stood in my cavernous walk-in closet, running my fingers along the 2 distinct worlds hanging there. On the left, Tom Ford suits and handmade loafers. On the right, my dad clothes, polos from the clearance aisle, khakis from a department store, and a pair of scuff shoes I'd bought years ago. I reached for a particularly unflattering faded blue polo that screamed, "I don't know how to dress for a gala," and paired it with beige trousers that were just a fraction too short. Looking in the mirror, I almost chuckled. The same face that had graced the cover of Global Tech Monthly last year now looked like every working-class father trying too hard to fit in at a country club. The drive to Westchester gave me time to reflect on why I'd kept this charade alive for so long. It wasn't just about my ex-wife's greedy family, though that had been the spark. When Corinne and I divorced 28 years ago, her relatives suddenly remembered I existed. Her cousin needed a loan for a guaranteed business. Her brother thought I should fund his nightclub idea. But with James, it was about something deeper. I wanted him to love me for me, not for the sports cars I could buy him. I wanted him to develop his own hunger, not coast on his father's success. And honestly, it worked. James graduated with honors, landed a job at a marketing firm on his own merit, and never once asked for money beyond a meal when times were tight. He was proud and independent, everything I'd hoped for. My phone rang through the Honda's tinny speakers. "Dad, you're coming, right? You're not going to cancel." "I'm on my way, son. GPS says 15 minutes. "Okay, good. Listen when you get here. Emily's parents are very particular. Use the side entrance, not the main double doors. Park in the street, not in the circular driveway. And Dad, please don't order beer if they offer drinks. They're wine people." I bit my tongue to keep from mentioning the $5,000 bottle of vintage Screaming Eagle Cabernet sitting in my climate-controlled cellar at home. "Got it. Street parking. Side door. No beer. And if her brother Julian starts talking about investments, just nod and smile. He's between ventures right now." Between ventures. The rich kid code for unemployed. I'd met 100 Julians in my career, silver spoon kids who thought their last name was a business strategy. "And Dad," James added, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Emily's mom, Eleanor, she might seem a little cold. It's not personal. She's like that with everyone who's not from the circle." The circle. James said it like he was already a member, but I could hear the desperate insecurity in his tone. He was still auditioning for a role in their play, still trying to prove he belonged, and apparently I was his biggest prop failure. The Sterlingvance estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured perfection, the kind of place where the grass looked like it had been trimmed with tweezers. The main house rose 3 stories high, a monument of red brick and pretension. I parked my Honda on the street, squeezed between a massive landscaping truck and a catering van. Walking up the long driveway, I counted 7 security cameras tracking my movement. The side entrance turned out to be through a rose garden that probably cost more than my first apartment. Before I could ring the bell, the door opened. A man in a formal butler's uniform looked at me with polite disdain. "Delivery entrance is around the back," he said, already closing the door. "I'm Robert, James's father, here for dinner." His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally professional neutrality. "Of course. My apologies, Mr. Collier. Please follow me." The foyer was larger than my entire fake house, adorned with marble floors and a chandelier that belonged in a museum. The butler led me through hallways lined with portraits of ancestors who looked like they'd never worked a day in their lives. We emerged into the dining room. James jumped up from his seat as if the chair was on fire. "Dad, you made it." He rushed over, his eyes scanning my outfit with barely concealed horror. "Everyone, this is my father, Robert." Arthur Sterlingvance stood slowly, as if the physical exertion was a favor to me. He was exactly what you'd expect: silver hair, country club tan, and a handshake that tried too hard to crush my fingers. "Robert, we've heard so much about you." The pause made it clear none of it was complimentary. Eleanor Sterlingvance didn't stand. She extended a limp hand. "Charmed, you must be exhausted from the drive. Where is it you live again?" "Riverside." "That's right," I said. "How quaint," she sniffed. Then there was Julian, the brother. Late 20s, wearing a designer shirt unbuttoned one too many times. He gave me a lazy wave. "Julian's just back from the Swiss Alps," Eleanor announced. "He's been networking with venture capitalists." Translation: he'd been skiing on Daddy's credit card. The seating arrangement was telling. Arthur and Eleanor at the ends, Julian and Emily flanking the mother, and James next to Emily. They had added a chair for me at the corner, the purgatory seat. "Can I offer you a drink?" Arthur asked. "We have an excellent Merlot breathing." "Dad usually drinks beer," James interjected quickly. "Beer?" Eleanor said the word like it was a disease. "I don't think we have any. Perhaps the staff could check the garage." "Water is fine," I said, watching them relax. Crisis averted. The peasant wouldn't taint the crystal. The dinner conversation was a masterclass in passive aggression. Arthur asked about my little consulting gigs, while Julian bragged about his new app idea that would revolutionize how people think about thinking. "It's complex," Julian said, smirking at me. "You probably wouldn't understand the technical aspects, Robert." The kid who had likely failed intro to computer science was explaining tech to me. It was better than a sitcom. "The problem with people today," Arthur pontificated, "is they don't understand pedigree. They think anyone can start a business, but breeding matters." "Absolutely," Alina agreed. "It's why we were so surprised when Emily brought James home. No offense, dear," she added to my son. "You've done admirably well considering your circumstances." "Circumstances?" I asked innocently. "Growing up without advantages," Alina waved her hand. "Raising a child alone on such a modest income. It must have been a struggle, Robert." "Dad did great," James whispered, looking at his plate, but I heard the shame in his voice. "Shame of me." "If you ever need financial advice," Arthur said, leaning in, "I know a guy running an exclusive investment opportunity. Guaranteed returns. Usually there. It's a $50,000 minimum, but I could get you in for 10. "That's generous," I said, recognizing the Ponzi scheme pitch immediately. "We believe in charity," Alina added. "Oh, and I have bags of Arthur's old suits in the garage. They might be a nice upgrade for you." She eyed my polo with disgust. The main course arrived, portions so small they looked like garnishes. The Sterling Vances drank from a vintage bottle while my glass was filled from a generic label. Message received. "You don't belong here." Then Julian's phone buzzed. "Hey James, is your dad even online? Does he have an email address?" Before I could answer, my phone vibrated loudly on the table. It was Maria, my executive assistant. "Excuse me, work emergency," I said. "At this hour," Alina scoffed. "Hourly workers, no boundaries." I stepped into the hall. "Maria, go ahead." "Mr. Collier," she said, her voice loud enough to carry. "Microsoft wants to move the signing to Monday. They're approving the full $7.3 million contract, and the Pentagon finally cleared your security review. Tell Microsoft Monday at 10, I said clearly, and send the Pentagon confirmation to my secure server. I hung up and walked back. The table was silent. Harold's fork was frozen in midair. "Did you say Microsoft?" James asked, confused. "Just a client issue," I sat down. "Where were we?" Julian, the blockchain." "Did you say 7 million? Julian stammered. I corrected him. 7.3, but please tell me more about your app." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The air grew heavy, charged with a sudden, suffocating tension. Harold set down his fork with a deliberate clink. Alina's frozen smile twitched. "I must have misheard," Arthur said slowly, his eyes narrowing. "It sounded like you were discussing a rather substantial contract." "Oh, it's not that large," I waved a hand dismissively. "Mid-sized for my firm, really." I turned my gaze to Julian. "So, regarding your blockchain integration, are you building on the Ethereum network or developing a proprietary protocol?" Julian's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. We're still in the conceptual phase." "For 3 years?" I asked, eyebrows raised. "Interesting strategy. Most startups aim for a minimum viable product within 6 months, but I'm sure Harvard Business School taught you differently." "How do you know about blockchain protocols?" Emily asked, her voice sharp with sudden suspicion. "I read," I said simply. My phone buzzed again. I deliberately left it face up on the table. The notification from my CFO lit up the screen. Q3 net profits confirmed at $4.8 million. Champagne worthy. Alina leaned forward, squinting. I saw the color drain from her face as the numbers registered in her mind. "Your phone is very active for a Saturday," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Occupational hazard," I replied, retrieving the phone but letting my banking app widget flash across the screen, displaying a portfolio balance that had 8 zeros. I knew Alina saw it. She looked like she might faint. Robert, Arthur cleared his throat, his tone suddenly devoid of arrogance. When you say consulting, what exactly does that entail? Oh, this and that. Cybersecurity infrastructure, AI integration for legacy systems. Boring stuff. Boring? James laughed nervously. Dad, you never mentioned AI. I thought you fixed computers for small businesses. That too, I said. Every client matters. I reached for my wallet to grab a tissue, moving with deliberate slowness. My American Express Centurion card, the black card made of anodized titanium, slipped out and hit the table with a distinctive heavy metallic clink. Every eye in the room locked onto it. It was the card you couldn't apply for. You had to be invited after spending $250,000 a year. Oops, I said, retrieving it. Is that? Arthur choked. Oh, this? Yeah, the metal ones are a pain at airport security. Dad, James whispered, his face pale. Where did you get that card? You don't get them, son. They come to you. I tucked it away. But enough about me. Arthur, about that investment opportunity. What kind of returns are we talking about? Arthur looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Perhaps we should discuss it privately. No need, I smiled coldly. Although I usually don't look at anything under 5 million. Due diligence takes the same amount of time, you understand. Julian, unable to handle the mystery, had been typing furiously on his phone. Robert Collier, cybersecurity, he muttered. Then his eyes bulged. Holy, Dad, look at this. He shoved his phone at Arthur. It was a TechCrunch article from last year, featuring a photo of me ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. That's you, Arthur whispered. Oh, that? Yeah, the IPO was a bit of a circus. Embarrassing, really. IPO. James stood up so fast his chair toppled over. Dad, you're richer than the Sterling Vances. Let's not make comparisons, I said gently. It says here your company is valued at. Emily grabbed the phone. This can't be right. Valuations are always inflated, I shrugged. The real number is probably 30% lower. 30% lower than $300 million, Julian shouted. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur looked sick. Alina looked terrified. Dad, why didn't you tell me? James's voice cracked. You never asked, son. You always seemed embarrassed by my little contracts, so I didn't bore you. Bore me? James looked at his in-laws, then back at me. Arthur stood up abruptly. Robert, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Why don't we start over? I have some ventures that could use a partner of your caliber. There it is, I said, standing up. The pivot. That investment you mentioned. It sounds like a pyramid scheme. And judging by public records, your company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 8 months ago. You're broke, Arthur. The house is leveraged, the cars are leased, and you're drowning in debt while judging me. The room went dead silent. How did you? Arthur gasped. Public records, I do my homework. I looked at my son. James, stop. You sat there and let them treat me like garbage because you wanted to fit in with people who are living a lie. They judged me by my bank account, not my character. And sadly tonight, so did you. Dad, wait, James stammered. I'm leaving. Arthur, get out of that scheme before you lose what little you have left. Julian, that thinking app failed 2 years ago when someone else launched it. Learn to code for real. And Alina, that wine you served me, the cheap one. It's a 2015 domain de la Romane Conti. It's worth $3,000, but you wouldn't know that because you buy based on price tags, not knowledge. I walked out, leaving the sound of a shattering wine glass behind me. I sat in my Honda, gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm my racing heart. I had won the battle, but I felt like I had lost the war. I had humiliated them, yes, but I had also exposed the distance between my son and me. Suddenly, the passenger door flew open. James climbed in, tears streaming down his face. Emily followed him, sliding into the back seat, looking disheveled and shaken. "Dad," James said, his voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. I was ashamed. Not of you, but of myself. I wanted their approval so bad I forgot whose approval actually mattered." I looked at him, really looked at him. "You chose their world over your dignity, James." "I know," he wept. "And they're frauds. Dad, I don't want your money. I don't want any of it. I want to earn my own way like you did. But please, forgive me." "Mr. Collier," Emily spoke up from the back, her voice small, "I'm ashamed of my family. I don't want to end up like them, pretending to be something I'm not. I want to work, real work." I looked at the two of them, just kids, really, terrified and humbled. The anger in my chest began to dissolve, replaced by the enduring love of a father. "Okay," I said softly. "We start over. No handouts. You build your own lives, but we do Sunday dinner at my real house tomorrow. We cook together. No servants." "I'd love that," James said, wiping his eyes. "Dad, why do you keep this car?" I smiled, starting the engine. "Because it reminds me that happiness isn't about what you drive, son. It's about who's along for the ride." We drove away from the mansion, leaving the fake world behind us. 6 months later, James and Emily started their own legitimate business. The Sterling Vances lost the estate, but Julian finally got a real job. As for me, I still drive the Honda, because money doesn't define you, it just reveals who you really are.